What would you do if you handed in your resignation, only to wake up the next morning and find out your dangerously powerful boss just bought the very roof over your head? This isn't a simple corporate game. This is what happens when you try to walk away from the Mafia. Olivia Jenkins was not a woman who blended into the background. At a solid size 18, with a wardrobe of impeccably tailored, jewel-toned pencil skirts and a presence that demanded respect, she was the undisputed queen of the executive floor at Russo Logistics. For 3 years, she had been the gatekeeper, the schedule master, and the problem solver for the CEO, Darius Russo. But Russo Logistics was a phantom. A pristine, glittering skyscraper in downtown Chicago that served as a brilliantly constructed front for the Russo crime family. Olivia knew. She had never seen a body, never witnessed a hit, and never handled an illegal weapon. But she wasn't stupid. She saw the men in cheap suits and cauliflower ears who bypassed security to take the private elevator. She noticed how the shipping manifests occasionally had gaps that no one was allowed to question. More importantly, she felt the terrifying electric aura that clung to Darius Russo like a second skin. Darius was a man carved from marble and ruthlessness. He rarely raised his voice, yet grown men sweated through their designer shirts when he simply looked at them. Everyone feared him. Everyone. Except Olivia. She was the only person who dared to tell him his tie was crooked, or that he needed to eat his lunch before his 3 o'clock meeting. She assumed he kept her around because her hyper-competence was useful, and because her soft, curvy figure and grounded demeanor made her invisible to the dangerous women and lethal men he usually associated with. She was wrong. She wasn't invisible to Darius. She was the only thing he actually saw. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in late October. Olivia had been woken up at 3 a.m. by a frantic call from one of Darius's associates, demanding she wire a massive, unrecorded sum to an offshore account to clear a shipping blockade. The sheer illegality of the request, coupled with the veiled threat in the caller's voice, snapped something inside her. The anxiety she had been swallowing for 3 years finally boiled over. She was a secretary, not a mob accomplice. She wanted a normal life. She wanted to go on dates without wondering if the man sitting across from her was secretly terrified of her boss. At 9 a.m. sharp, Olivia walked into Darius's sprawling corner office. The room smelled of expensive leather, bergamot, and rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Darius was standing by the glass, a tumbler of black coffee in his hand, looking out over the city he practically owned. "You're in early, Olivia," he said, not turning around. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone that always made a traitorous shiver run down her spine. "I need to speak with you, Mr. Russo," she said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. He turned, his dark eyes instantly locking onto hers. They raked over her emerald green dress, lingering for a fraction of a second on the curve of her hips, before snapping back to her face. "Darius. I've told you to call me Darius when we're alone." "Mr. Russo," she repeated firmly, stepping forward and placing a crisp, white envelope on his massive mahogany desk. "This is my formal 2 weeks' notice. I'm resigning." Silence descended on the room. It was absolute, suffocating, and heavy. Darius didn't look at the envelope. He just stared at her, his jaw ticking once. "Excuse me?" he said softly. The softness was the most dangerous part. "I'm leaving," Olivia said, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. "I've organized the transition files. I'll spend the next 2 weeks training my replacement, assuming human resources can find someone quickly. If not, I have a detailed manual prepared. Darius slowly set his coffee down. He walked around the desk with the predatory grace of a keyed panther. He stopped mere inches from her, forcing Olivia to tilt her head up to maintain eye contact. The heat radiating off him was immense. "Are you unhappy with your salary?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll double it." "It's not about the money. Are you overworked? Tell me who is bothering you. I will have them removed." The way he said removed made Olivia's stomach drop. "No one is bothering me. I can't do this anymore." The 3 a.m. calls, the strange men in the lobby, the stress. "I want a normal job, Darius. I want a normal life." Darius leaned in, his face so close she could feel the faint brush of his breath against her cheek. "You don't belong in a normal life, Olivia. You belong here." "I don't," she fired back, finding her courage. "I am a secretary. You can replace me in a day." A dark, unrecognizable effusion flashed in his eyes. "I will not accept this resignation." "It's not a request," Olivia said, stepping back to break his magnetic pull. "It's a notification. 2 weeks, Mr. Russo. And then I'm gone." She turned on her heel and marched out of the office, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had done it. She had stood up to the boss of the Chicago underworld and walked away. For the rest of the day, Darius didn't speak a word to her. He didn't call her into his office, didn't ask for his schedule. When 5 p.m. struck, Olivia packed her bag and left, feeling a dizzying mix of absolute triumph and profound grief. She thought she had won her freedom. She had no idea she had just triggered a war. For the next 10 days, the atmosphere at Russo Logistics was a suffocating vacuum. Darius treated Olivia with a chilling, professional detachment. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He simply existed as an ice-cold monolith, accepting the replacement candidates HR brought in and dismissing them just as quickly. Olivia threw herself into her exit strategy. She updated her resume, applied to 3 prominent law firms, and started packing up the small, sentimental items on her desk. Every evening, she retreated to her sanctuary, a spacious, pre-war apartment in a worn but charming brick building at 412 West Oak Street. It wasn't luxurious, but the rent was stabilized. The vintage crown molding was beautiful, and her kindly septuagenarian landlord, Arthur Henderson, always fixed the radiator when she asked. It was her safe haven. On day 11 of her notice period, Olivia arrived home to find a pristine, thick white envelope taped to her front door. It lacked postage. It had been hand-delivered. Frowning, she carried it inside, dropped her keys on the counter, and tore it open. It was a notice from a property management company she had never heard of, Apex Holdings. Dear Tenant, this letter serves as official notification that the property located at 412 West Oak Street has been acquired by Apex Holdings, LLC. Effective immediately, all current month-to-month leases are subject to review. Due to extensive building-wide renovations scheduled to begin next week, your rent will be increased by 300%. If you cannot accommodate the new terms, consider this your 14-day notice to vacate. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. A 300% increase? Eviction in 14 days? That was entirely illegal. She grabbed her phone and dialed Arthur Henderson's number. It rang and rang until a disconnected tone sounded. Panic clawed at her throat. She couldn't afford a massive rent hike, and trying to find a new apartment in Chicago while simultaneously hunting for a new job was a financial death sentence. At the bottom of the letter, a single sentence was bolded. To discuss lease modifications or relocation assistance, tenants must report in person to the Apex Holdings leasing office at 8 p.m. tonight. An address was listed. A very exclusive high-end address in the Gold Coast district. Olivia spent the next 2 hours pacing her living room, furiously drafting legal arguments in her head. She was a woman who knew her rights. She wasn't going to let some faceless corporate monolith bully her out of her home just because they wanted to flip the building for tech bros. She changed out of her work clothes and into a pair of sharp, black, wide-leg trousers and a crimson blouse that clung perfectly to her curves, arming herself with confidence. At 7:45 p.m., she marched up to the address. It wasn't a standard office building. It was a private luxury high-rise. The concierge silently checked her name and swiped a key card, sending her straight to the penthouse. When the elevator doors parted, Olivia stepped into a massive, dimly lit room overlooking Lake Michigan. The space was hyper-modern, all dark steel, black leather, and glass. But there were no leasing agents. There was no desk. There was only Darius Russo, sitting in a leather armchair, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. Olivia stopped dead in her tracks. Her briefcase suddenly felt like lead in her hand. "What is this?" she breathed. Darius took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes drinking her in, hungry and unapologetic. "Hello, Olivia. Please sit." You own Apex Holdings," she said, the horrifying realization washing over her. She connected the dots in a matter of seconds. "You bought my apartment building?" "I did," he confirmed smoothly, setting his glass down. "To what? To evict me? Because I quit?" Her voice rose, a mix of outrage and disbelief echoing in the vast penthouse. "Are you out of your mind, Darius? You bought an entire residential building just to enact petty revenge on a secretary." Darius stood up, the lazy, relaxed posture vanishing. He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Petty revenge? You think this is a game, Olivia? You're raising my rent by 300%. You're forcing me out onto the street." "I'm not forcing you onto the street," he growled, stopping right in front of her. "I'm forcing you to stay right where I can see you." "You can't do this," she yelled, shoving a hand against his solid chest, though it was like trying to push a brick wall. "I'm leaving the company. You can't control my private life." Darius reached up, his large, warm hand wrapping around her wrist, not tight enough to hurt, but firm enough to hold her in place. "You're not leaving the company, and you're not leaving that apartment. Do you know why I bought that building today, Olivia? It wasn't to punish you. It was to save your damn life." Olivia froze, her anger momentarily derailed by the raw intensity in his voice. "What are you talking about?" Darius released her wrist and ran a hand through his dark hair, looking genuinely stressed for the first time since she had met him. "When you handed in your notice, you removed yourself from my immediate protection. You thought you were just quitting a job. You didn't realize that Victor Costello's men have been watching you for a month." The name sent a chill down her spine. Victor Costello. He was the head of a rival syndicate, a man known for his brutal, merciless tactics. "Why would they watch me?" Olivia whispered. "Because they know you are my weakness," Darius said, the confession hanging in the air between them, heavy and irrefutable. "They know you run my life. They know I trust you more than my own blood. Yesterday, my security caught 2 of Costello's scouts trying to bypass the locks on your building's service entrance. Your old landlord had 0 security. Anyone could walk right up to your door." Olivia stepped back, her legs suddenly trembling. So you bought the building?" "I bought the building," Darius said, his eyes fierce. I fired the management, installed bulletproof glass on the lower levels, and put 4 of my best men on rotation in the lobby, disguised as concierges. The rent hike notice? A legal loophole to get the rest of the tenants to voluntarily vacate over the next month so I can secure the entire perimeter. But you aren't paying a dime. You are staying in your apartment, and you are returning to your desk on Monday. Because if Costello thinks you are no longer under my wing, he will snatch you off the street just to get to me. Olivia's mind spun. You're insane. You're holding me hostage under the guise of protecting me. Darius stepped into her space again, his hand coming up to gently cup her jaw, his thumb brushing against her cheekbone. The touch was